at businessofcannabis.com. Yep, on this BFC Live, we connect with Emily Paxhia of Poseidon. She's a longtime investor in the cannabis sector, and she's up for a panel that you can pick on South by Southwest Panel Picker. We'll post how you can do that on our website at businessofcannabis.com. This is BFC Live with Emily Paxhia. Emily Paxhia, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you, and we have a topic to talk about. But before we talk about the topic we're going to talk about, tell us about Poseidon first for those that, I don't know, probably only people new to the industry don't know what it is, but give us a little background about Poseidon.
Yeah, Poseidon is an investment firm that's been allocating capital into the cannabis and hemp industry since January of 2014. It was founded by my brother, whose birthday is today, August 19th, and myself. And we've grown our team. We have an amazing set of folks working with us who have a range of different backgrounds and skills. And so couldn't be prouder of the organization that we have at Poseidon.
Yeah, and when you look on the Poseidon website, you will see some of the most important companies and brands in the space. Talk a little bit about sort of your investment, like, 2014 in normal years doesn't sound that long, but in cannabis years is like the Stone Age, yeah?
Yeah, so like dog years is 7, so 8 times 7 is 56. So it's a long time. But we've been investing since before there were phrases such as multi-state operators or even licensed producers in Canada. We were investors when Canopy Growth Corp was Tweed, coming out of Ontario, Canada, and it's been a wild ride. But one of the things that we set out to do was we're big believers in the industry as a net positive effect for society, and so for us, it's been investing in the infrastructure across the entire landscape of the industry. And actually, our first equity investments into what we call plant touching companies, meaning that they are somehow involved in the cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail of the product was in Canada because it was federally legal there. So names that have now become household names like Aphria and Canopy Growth Corp, we were private investors into that. And then we started to rotate our capital back to the US, as we've always been very bullish on our market. And since then, we've had a few different strategies investing into the industry, and we've covered now the US, Canada, Mexico, Colombia, and Western Europe. So pretty excited to see Poseidon having a reach like that.
I like it. I like it. And particularly why we wanted to talk to you today, of course, to hear about Poseidon and the history and how you guys have been operating and allocating capital. But we wanted to talk about the panel picker. And I'm panel picker with Emily Paxhia from Poseidon. It's a lot to get hold of in one day. Tell us about the panel picker and what folks should be deciding on and taking action on.
Yeah, so we've been a part of South by Southwest for a few years. I was very proud of them when they embarked on including cannabis. At first, they included it on the wellness track, and then they really created its own, cannabis had its own track. This year, we're on the panel picker for a couple of things. The one I'm on is for kind of the global market viewpoint of cannabis. And it's me and Boris Jordan, and a few other names. And it should be really interesting discussion and discourse, because I don't think we necessarily all perfectly agree on not just the thesis, but the timeline, the way that it'll roll out. So I think it'll be a pretty lively discussion, and I'm excited about it.
That's good fun, because I think we often maybe see disagreement like on Twitter, but in the context of a panel, it's either more or less confrontational. But the difference of opinions now, I think, are really intriguing to sort of unpack why people think some states are going to go or some states are not, or Western Europe is going to lead the way on CBD and hemp and maybe very long time. Like, I think all of those things are interesting conversations, and they're interesting as conversations, but from your perspective, there's also real business opportunity and challenges within there as you guys are allocating resources.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and we have so Boris obviously has placed a large bet in Western Europe with their investment into EMAC. And I said Boris Jordan, right? Because did you hear about the hilarious promotion that was going around saying Boris Johnson?
Oh my God, that would be a great You'd be a great panelist
It
on
was
this.
great. I
Amazing.
was like, oh, I didn't know I was on with the UK Prime Minister. This is going to be really interesting. But
Really, it's
um,
from 2014 to being on with the British Prime Minister. That would be a big deal.
that would be a big deal. I don't know where he sits on cannabis, but I'm thinking it's not totally in alignment. But
No.
but Boris obviously is a he has a very strong point of view, and so do I. So I feel like that'll be really fun and interesting. And I have a very strong perspective on LATAM as an interesting market to watch, as well as Europe. But I think we can talk around those things. And then you have Javier Haas from Benzinga, who is at any given time based out of Latin America, and he's obviously carrying an interesting torch about a perspective of the markets down there as someone who's actually there at many times. And then you have Stephen Murphy from Prohibition Partners, who will be bringing in a whole different view because they do reports on the European markets. So I actually think it's a really well balanced panel. And to your point, yeah, we can like bicker on Twitter, but what's more interesting is if you can have a discourse in person where you're not always aligned, and then actually tease these little nuanced issues apart and let the viewers understand where they want to sit on this issue. So that's our job.
Yeah, it really, it's really, I think even just thinking about the full scope, you talked about, I think 56 years, right? So it's 2014 and now times 7. And just, I wonder if you could take yourself back to sort of 2014, 2015, project 5 or 6 years later where you're having a conversation, with sort of key leaders in the sector, of course, but even having a conversation about really the globalization of cannabis and where it will be. It seems like a long time, but it is relatively rapid to have the serious conversations really in that time horizon.
Yeah, one of the things when we started investing was to also hold ourselves out there as big supporters of the industry, and also share that we are consumers of cannabis in various form factors, and what we talk about in the more mature CPG world of need states. And so, it's like your CBD tincture in the morning, it's your cannabis beverage at night. Like, find the thing that works for you. But the whole thing about this industry is that it's been sitting on this wonderful spectrum of pretty full pharma or medical through wellness all the way to lifestyle. And having folks standing out there saying, this is a part of my life, the athletes have been a part of it, the celebrities have been a part of it. We like to think we all as a collective industry have been a part of it. But I have been amazed at the pace of change around perceptions of this industry. And it really shows up in the elections that happen, but on the global scale, you can see some of the shifts that are happening both in terms of the Olympic discussions around this and the UN, which has been one of our bigger concerns on the international piece, is some of those treaties that the UN has in place that actually were dictated by the US back when we slammed cannabis into prohibition. So it's our job to continue to shift and shape perceptions around cannabis, to create regulations that can help the consumer to engage in the category safely and happily. And then I think that we'll continue to shift it. But I really didn't think it would go this quickly. And it is just interesting too to see how private industry is really leading the way and government's kind of dragging behind. Not that surprising, but you've seen this happen in the kind of the natural foods markets and organic markets and biodynamics, and now we're seeing it in cannabis too. So on a global standpoint, I've been staggered. It's staggering the shift that I've seen.
It's funny because you're talking about it from a macro level and big picture, but we did an event, digital event in South Dakota last week, and those same conversations are happening on a very, very micro level. And you're right, it is industry pushing. It is also consumers and voters pushing, and elected officials and regulators are like being dragged into it, but they're like the last ones. Like it's really like, look, if 75% of the people in South Dakota vote for something, they really want it and they really don't want you to stand in the way. And yes, there's an industry behind it. And yes, there's but it really comes from the grassroots. And so they're the last ones to come to it, the regulators and elected officials, and maybe the UN, the very last, but it's the arc is moving that way.
The arc is moving that way. And it's like, what other issue are you ever seeing 75% of people agreeing on, especially in the United States right now? I mean, if that doesn't speak to the politicians, I don't understand what, because it's their whole job to represent us and to understand the interests of their constituents. So
you can get a 50-50
yeah,
vote on apple pie.
exactly. Well, I know where I land on apple pie.
But apple pie with cannabis, it would be like 75%. Like it would be a whole thing.
Yep.
So we'll send out how people can do their panel picker, and we'll cast our vote. I don't know if 75% of the people will vote for your panel, but I think we might get close. Thank you for your time, Emily. It was nice to connect. I look forward to connecting with you down the road.
Thank you for having me.
That was Emily Paxhia of Poseidon. If you like this program, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you heard the show. It helps support the work we do. We're able to do what we do because of our ongoing partners, including Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque and Maine. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.